Hey girls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and today's video is going to be my 2020 wrap up of my reading goals plus my reading goals for 2021. Now, I don't have too many goals for my reading in 2021 just because I am such a mood reader. I find that my reading years tend to go better the less amount of pressure that I put on myself and the less amount of like structured reading that I have. So I really only try and pick maybe 3 or 4 specific reading goals for each year, and that works really well for me. For example, in 2020 I only had 3 reading goals. I hit 2 out of the 3 of them, but I'm okay with that. And then for 2021 I do have 4 specific reading goals slash bookish goals for the upcoming year. So first of all, we are just going to get into my goals for 2020. As I'm filming this, it is the 28th of December, so it is really easy for me to see which ones I hit and which ones I didn't. I definitely can't like fix the one that I didn't achieve in the next 2 days. So the first goal that I had for 2020 that I actually hit was read 100 books. And I think that at the current time of this filming, I either have read 117 or 118 books this year. So I hit that really well. This is actually less books than I read in 2019, but looking at the page count of books between 2019 and 2020, I definitely read bigger books, just fewer books in 2020. So I definitely achieved that one. And then my next goal was to read a nonfiction book every single month. So I just had a tracker of 12 different books and then I'd check them off. I did get 12. I actually read a lot more than 12. I think it ended up being about 15 to 20 books that were nonfiction that I read this year. So that was really good as well. I definitely really like reading nonfiction, but it's never something that's like on my priority. So having that as a little check-in each month makes me get 2 books on my TBR that are nonfiction that I may or may not prioritize and get some good nonfiction reading in. And then the third goal, which was the one that I did not hit this year, was read a Stephen King book every single month. And I read 7 Stephen King books this year. And honestly, I only set this one pretty much every single year because the man has so many books. I think it's like at almost like 80 now. I want to finish them all before I die. So I definitely want to make sure that I am reading a good amount of those per year. I'm okay with the number. I didn't really think I was going to hit 12 because definitely he's one of my favorite authors, but I have to be in a very specific mood to read his books. And I am okay with only having read 7 books by him. However, I think about 4 of them were rereads for me this year. So number 1, I didn't really hit my goal of 12 books. And then number 2, I didn't really read new books, which was the point of the goal, was to try and get through the back list that he has. So those are my 3 reading goals for 2020. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And especially, I mean, like I said, I definitely don't do a lot. I don't like putting pressure on myself in any way for reading. So 2 out of 3, I'm okay with that. But going on to my 2021 reading goals, and a lot of them are going to be very similar to 2020. So my first 2021 reading goal is read 100 books again. Honestly, I feel like I am at the point where genuinely, without tracking my books, I do tend to hit around 100 books each year. So it's not like a stretch goal that makes reading unenjoyable for me. At the same time, I feel like it's not a goal that would stress me out too much. This is definitely one that's like kind of easier to achieve for me just based on how I read naturally and just the volume of books that I read in a given year. However, I'm definitely of the mindset of quality of books over quantity. So if I ever don't hit 100 books in a year, that's gonna be okay with me. I feel like 100 books in a year is just like a nice goal. Like it looks nice on paper. I don't know what it is about that number, but it just looks like a fun New Year's resolution type goal. So I'm keeping it. I anticipate that one will be pretty easy for me to hit because I think I've read from between like 110 to 130 books for the past like 4 years. So I'm just keeping it at 100 because I could go higher, but 100 is just a nice number. And then the next goal is to read 12 nonfiction books. I did really well with it last year, and I really enjoyed picking out nonfiction books to kind of fit my mood. Like, some of them were autobiographies, some of them were niche micro histories, some of them were more general, some of them were true crime. So I really enjoyed picking out like a nonfiction book that fit the vibe of what I wanted to read in fiction that month. So I'm definitely going to keep that. I think I can read more than 12 nonfiction books in a year, but again, just one per month. That seems really, really doable for me. The third goal that I have is, again, reading 12 Stephen King books in a year, and I am going to add like a little caveat to that. I don't want to do a lot of rereads. This year I reread so many books of his. Like, just off the top of my head, I reread The Shining, I reread It, so a lot of pages in 2020 were dedicated to rereads just in general, not just for Stephen King. And this year I definitely needed that, but next year I'd like to try and maybe say that they're going to be 12 new Stephen King books that I've never read. Maybe we'll say 11 new ones and keep one that it can be new or can be a reread, because I do love my rereads. That's definitely a goal that I really want to try and hit this year, especially because there are a ton of adaptations that have come out previously and that are coming out in the near future that I definitely want to read the book before I see the adaptation. Like, I haven't read The Stand yet. I was going to do it this year, but just pandemic. Just didn't want to read about a pandemic during a pandemic. So I'm hoping to definitely read like The Stand next year. I'd like to read the Bachman books just because I feel like that is one of his works that he's really well known for. I'd like to read Revival because I know that's coming out. I don't know if it's next year or 2022. These don't even sound like real years, but either 2021 or 2022 is Revival. That's coming out, so I want to read that. And then I do want to attempt to read a book of his short stories, because definitely I haven't read enough of those. I have read some of the more iconic short stories that he has, like Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, but I haven't really read the entirety of a lot of his short story collections, so I'd like to get to like some of those. So yeah, going for 12 Stephen King books this year. Hopefully they can be more new books and not rereads for me like I did this year. And then the last goal that I have is probably going to be the hardest one for me to do out of all of these. I am putting myself on a semi-book buying ban until this summer, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Well, there's only one big reason, honestly. I am moving this summer, and you know, books are a hard thing to move if you have a ton of them. I already have a lot of them. I already have 2 bookshelves that are full of books, and I just feel like, even though I wouldn't be buying like a massive amount of books between January and May when this move is happening, I just think that any little bit helps. So I am going to try and not buy any books just until we move, and that is something I am trying in like all aspects of my life until May, is really not to like buy any unnecessary purchases or try and like cut down on clutter. Not that books are clutter, but just cut down on the amount of things that we're moving, because there's a very, very high likelihood that we are going to be moving states. So because we are moving for school related reasons, and the closest I think that we'd be moving is about 4 hours. So we've got like 4 hours, we've got a 10-hour one, 11-hour drive. So it's going to be a bigger move, and I feel like books are just so heavy, and I get so anxious about transporting my books and making sure that they aren't damaged moving from place to place. I don't want to increase my stress. So I do have my book of the month subscription, and I do still have my Libro FM subscription, so I will still be using those. So I will be getting just a couple of books from January to May, June, you know, whenever we move. So it's definitely not an outright book buying ban, and I'm also not going to beat myself up if I do buy a book, but I definitely want to try and limit just buying books and buying more things until we move. So that one's definitely going to be the hardest, but I think out of like my 10 most anticipated releases for 2021, most of them do come out like the later half of the year. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it won't be too hard for me, because that is definitely going to be lifted once we move, because once we move, will be in the next place for a really long time, so I won't have to worry about the size of my book collection. But yeah, those are my 2021 reading goals. Like I said, there aren't a lot of them here. I like to keep it very, very simple. Obviously, I do have like some other kind of goals that I keep in mind when picking out books and prioritizing books, just in terms of like representation and who's writing them and which authors that I want to prioritize over other authors. But those are the ones that like I have on paper that I really want to get to. I don't like structure. Reading for me is a very escapist hobby, and I've definitely learned, especially on like my time on booktube, the more I structure it, the more it feels like a task or something to do rather than a hobby and something to be done for fun. So hopefully we'll be able to hit 4 out of those 4 reading goals in 2021, but that is going to be the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, subscribe for more content from me, stay safe, stay spooky, and I'll see y'all on the other side. Bye!